The Sioux, also known as the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota, are a group of Native American tribes that originally lived in the region that is now Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Dakotas. The name Sioux is a bit of a catch-all term, but they actually prefer to be called by their own names. Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota, which refer to their dialects and means friend or ally. The Sioux people were initially woodland tribes, living a sedentary lifestyle with some agriculture. They grew crops like corn, beans, and squash, but also relied on hunting and gathering. Everything changed dramatically when they got horses in the 17th century. With horses, the Sioux became incredibly mobile, turning into the quintessential Plains Indians that we often picture, master horse riders and buffalo hunters. They were divided into three main groups: the Eastern Dakota, the Western Dakota, and the Lakota. Each group had several bands. The Lakota, the largest group, moved farthest west and are often the most well-known. They were especially prominent in what is now South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Nebraska, and Wyoming. Their lives revolved around the buffalo. The buffalo provided food, clothing, shelter, and tools. They followed the herds across the Great Plains, living in teepees that were easy to pack up and move. The Sioux developed a deep, spiritual connection with the buffalo and saw them as a gift from the Great Spirit. Socially, the Sioux were organized into bands, each led by a chief who earned his position through wisdom, bravery, and leadership skills. They had a very communal way of life where resources were shared and decisions were made collectively in council meetings. Their spirituality was central to their lives. They believed in Wakantanka, the Great Spirit, and the interconnectedness of all living things. Important ceremonies included the Sun Dance, a complex ritual that involved dancing, singing, and sometimes self-sacrifice, meant to bring harmony and good fortune to the tribe. They also had vision quests, where individuals sought spiritual guidance through fasting and prayer. The arrival of European settlers brought immense changes and challenges. In the early 19th century, there were initially some peaceful interactions and trade. But as more settlers moved westward, conflicts over land and resources escalated. The Sioux, like many other Native American tribes, found themselves in frequent conflicts with settlers and the U.S. military. One of the most famous conflicts was the Dakota War of 1862, also known as the Sioux Uprising in Minnesota. The Sioux were frustrated by broken treaties and the poor conditions on their reservations. This led to a violent conflict, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of settlers and Native Americans. It ended with a mass execution of 38 Sioux men, the largest mass execution in U.S. history. In the late 19th century, the Great Sioux War of 1876 to 1877 was another major conflict. This included famous battles like the Battle of the Little Bighorn, where Sioux warriors, led by leaders such as Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, famously defeated General Custer's forces. Despite their victory, the U.S. government continued to push the Sioux onto reservations. Life on reservations was a drastic change. The Sioux had to adapt to a sedentary lifestyle, often facing poor living conditions, insufficient food, and loss of their traditional ways of life. The U.S. government tried to assimilate them, banning their ceremonies and forcing their children into boarding schools where they were punished for speaking their language and practicing their culture. Despite these hardships, the Sioux have shown remarkable resilience. They've maintained much of their culture, language, and traditions. Leaders like Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse are remembered as symbols of resistance and strength. Today, the Sioux are spread across several reservations, primarily in the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Montana. They continue to face challenges, including poverty and issues related to health and education. However, they are also working hard to revitalize their culture and language. There are programs dedicated to teaching the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota languages to young people, ensuring that their rich heritage is preserved. Modern Sioux communities are active in advocating for their rights and sovereignty. They've been involved in significant legal battles over land rights and have had successes, such as the 1980 Supreme Court ruling in United States v. Sioux Nation of Indians, which acknowledged that the Black Hills were taken illegally and awarded compensation. The Sioux have refused the money, insisting instead on the return of their sacred land. The story of the Sioux Nation is one of incredible endurance. From their powerful days on the plains to the struggles of reservation life and their ongoing efforts to preserve their culture, the Sioux continue to be a vital part of the American story. Their traditions, values, and resilience offer a profound example of the enduring spirit of Native American peoples.